In early spring of 1991, thousands of people gathered at Cornell University in upstate New York. From all over North America, they came together to see His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama.
I come from East and from Tibet. Usually people call roof of the world. So you see, my cultural background is something different. Due to different culture, my way of thinking also may be different. But however, we gathered here one place because irrespective what culture, so what faith, what a professional, all are same human being. On that basis, we come together.
Cornell University is honoring the Year of Tibet, and this is one of the reasons why His Holiness has come to Ithaca. Tibet has a long and rich cultural heritage. Unfortunately, this cultural heritage has been under systematic and brutal attack for the last 40 years. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has warned that if we do not take care to preserve and protect this cultural heritage, it will disappear from the face of this earth within the next 1 or 2 generations. As part of the Year of Tibet, tonight I want to introduce Nawang Khechok. Nawang Khechok was born in Tibet, was a monk, had to flee Tibet and then lived in India. He has blended part of his own culture with Western musical traditions.
Your Holiness, ladies and gentlemen, you will not need me to reassure you that your welcome here tonight is joyful and warm. But I want also to welcome those of you who are in the audience, here in Barton Hall, and in Statler, and in Alberding, in each of which we have a full house, a total of some 12,000 people here tonight to hear the Dalai Lama. We reach out and welcome the opportunity tonight to learn from an ancient and benevolent civilization. The Dalai Lama was born in eastern Tibet, and at the age of 2 was identified by a group of senior lamas and a search party as the 14th Dalai Lama. Few would have guessed on that fateful day how severely his leadership skills were to be tested. For he was formally inaugurated in 1950 at age 15, shortly after the Chinese had invaded his country. The invasion was described as modernization of Tibet, and to begin with, the Dalai Lama accepted it as that and attempted to work peacefully and cooperatively with the Chinese. But rising tensions and rising oppression meant that by 1959, he had to move into exile. In the 40 years that separate us from that event, 1/6 of the people of Tibet have died at the hands of that modernization program, and more than 100,000 have been forced into exile. But through it all, the 14th Dalai Lama has shown a grace and generosity of spirit that have made him the inspiration not only of his own people, but also of others across the world. In the face of hardship and suffering, he has stood resolutely for the settling of human differences by discussion and peaceful persuasion, and of establishing worldwide a basic set of human rights on which misunderstandings could be settled. It was that inspiration that was recognized in 1989 by the award of the Nobel Prize for Peace. And with characteristic modesty, His Holiness accepted the prize not for himself, but on behalf of the people of Tibet. In the day and a half that the Dalai Lama has spent upon our campus and within our community, he has graced us by that larger vision of his own humanity. I'm proud to present to you His Holiness, the Dalai Lama.
Brothers, sisters, I'm very, very happy to be here with you. And especially, you see these really beautiful flowers. I really enjoyed. So thank you very much. All the arrangement, and I very much appreciate, and I would like to thank to those concerned people. Without their effort, this opportunity will not materialize. So I very much appreciate. Now many people come here, I think with some expectation. I'm afraid I have nothing to offer to you except to share some of my thought and my own little experience. So perhaps I hope some of you might find some new idea, possibly can, adopt your, your life. I think here, you see, this gathering, people from different places. I think you see different, no doubt, different mental dispositions. So always, whenever we find some differences, still there are certain things which combined with, which unified. Now, after all, every human being, by nature, want happiness and joy, do not want suffering. The genuine sense of brotherhood, sisterhood, on the basis of compassion. That is, I consider that is the key factor. On that basis, it can develop some kind of, the realization of oneness in humanity. And on that basis, it can be possible to develop the sense of universal responsibility. Now, today's world, I believe, we need that kind of, sense of responsibility. That kind of outlook. Because I think today, the world structure is something, is such that, for example, the modern economy is beyond the national boundary. And also the ecology problem, these things, the one or two individual nation cannot handle. So unless entire humanity, unless the worldwide make effort, things cannot solve. Therefore, I think world itself now telling us humanity have to work together on the basis of usually I call sense of universal responsibility. Now for that, I consider the most important thing is human good heart or human affection. If you have, the human affection or love and compassion, then that creates inner strength, or that creates self-confidence, and that remove fear. That's very important for our daily life. If we have, the human will or determination, then we can utilize, I think, properly human intelligence. So combined human intelligence and human determination, human will, then our future definitely will be bright, better. So the something like prime mover in a positive direction is good heart. We should not consider, the subject of, love and compassion, forgiveness, these things, as a religious subject. I believe when a human being born, I think we are free from any religion, any ideology, any faith, but we are not free from compassion and love. So therefore, it is very, very important to realize, these compassion or love, these things as a, the basic human good quality rather than religious subject. It's a various different religion. What they do is they're simply strengthening or increasing these natural human good qualities. Now everybody, I think, agree the compassion, love, these things, something good. But then the question is, can we really cultivate these things? And can we really increase? Of course, this is not easy, but I can say, definitely it can, it can increase, it can develop. Because, firstly, human mind, in a way, difficult to change. But then, with proper reasoning, see, with proper, how to say, training, then time can change. According to my own small experience. Now, for example, you see, when I was young, I was quite short-tempered. It's that kind of person. But then, you see, the realization of the negativeness about anger and the positive thing about compassion and love, these things. Then eventually, see, it changed. Now today, of course, still, occasionally, I got temper, but you see, I think in most cases, see, quite, how to say, quite calm. And occasionally, you see, anger remain a few minutes. So, according to my own experience, it is possible, very possible, you see, to change for better. Now, because I think although the anger and hatred, jealousy, these also part of human mind. But I believe the dominant force of human thought or human mind is human love and compassion, human affection. There's no doubt. If we look closely about the human nature, if we examine right from the beginning of our life and till to death, I think the compassion or human affection is the major role. Anger occasionally comes, but not the major role. Now, for example, even before birth, while the child still remains in mother's, womb, you see, the mother's mental attitude or mental tranquility is one crucial factor for the health or development, proper development of the unborn child. Then after birth, according to doctor, some you see modern doctor, modern scientist, the next few weeks is the crucial period for development of the brain or enlargement of brain. So during that period, simply mother's physical touch is most forceful or most important factor for that development. So this indicates the human body itself need the other's, affection. Then, of course, during education, again, now obviously, when we learn certain, when we learn, those lessons which we received from a teacher, not only teach the subject properly, but also, you see, caring your own future, your own being, your own welfare, well-being. You see, the lesson which you received from a person towards you feel very close. See, that lesson usually, you see, goes much deeper in our brain. Those lessons which you received from a teacher who, no showing any sort of concern, any feeling towards you. You see, that lesson usually, sometimes we feel like burden. So that also is the human, human nature. it indicates human nature. Then, naturally, when we get sick, you see, we have to go to see a doctor. Then, you see, when we meeting a doctor, the doctor with full human feeling, with smile, with sort of, you see, the genuine concern about you, then you feel much at ease, or much comfortable. Then sometimes there's a doctor with a lot of the modern machines and equipment, but the doctor himself or herself showing as a part of machine, so no human feeling. Then sometimes we feel a little bit uncomfortable, isn't it? So these experiences shows how much we need the other's affection. And then the last day, our life, at that moment, we know there's nothing help from our friend during that moment. You know, you see, now you definitely departing from them. No more use, your companion. However, at that moment, even that moment, the dying person, surrounded by trusted, friend, then feel much easier. So, therefore, I believe the basic human nature is more gentle, gentleness, compassionate one. Some people argue with that idea that human basic nature is aggressive nature. Now, sometimes I, jokingly, argue with my, friend that if we look our physical structure beside our mental, a mental state or mental nature, but even look at our physical structure, it seems we belong those animal species who are more gentle. See, check or I think you should look at our nail, our nails and our teeth. You see, if we examine our own body, it seems we belong like deer or rabbit or these very beautiful gentle animal, rather than tiger or lion. Then again, human physical structure. If our two hand, use pushing, then result you will be lonely. You will be alone. If you two hand go this way, you get two more friends, isn't it? So thinking these lines constantly, then I feel the human basic nature is more positive than a negative. So that also very important factor. There is possibility, to change from negative to positive. One thing. Then again, as I mentioned earlier, by birth, by nature, we want happiness. Do not want suffering. And then love, compassion, good heart, generally, bring us fortune, bring us joy, happiness. And good heart bring us more genuine friend, with genuine smile. say, you see, I think beautiful, genuine smile is, I think, very important in our life. When someone, you see, feel uncomfortable or, I think, a bad mood, something, whether the person, I mean, know or not, someone show to you see, genuine human, how to say, feeling with genuine smile. It becomes something like medicine. You see, it very helpful, isn't it, to remove some kind of, how to say, negative mood or some you say, uncomfortable feeling. So therefore, you see, the compassion to human being, you see, this friend, genuine smile, friend is something very essential. After all, we human being is a social animal. Whether we like it or not, we have to live together, side by side. So, you see, nature law is so powerful. If we examine, you see, certain animals such as bees, you see, the nature law is such that, you see, they have, I think, a very good sense of responsibility. They have no religion, they have no constitution, no police, but somehow, due to their nature, you see, they got some kind of sense of responsibility and a sense of, how to say, coordination or cooperation. We human beings, on the other hand, although same kind of social animal. And more than that, we have religion, we have constitution, we have many things. But somehow, sometimes, in a certain way, we more, how to say, stupid, isn't it? So therefore, so again, from that viewpoint also, the basic human nature is, you see, the compassion is something key factor. As I mentioned earlier, you see, the friend. How to bring a genuine friend? Through anger, through money, through force. Impossible to create or to bring genuine friend. Genuine friend bring only through genuine good heart. You know, you see, wealthy people or people who have power, you see, usually they got more, how to say, more smile, as a more friend. But these friends, I often, you see, telling people that these friends are not genuine friend. You see, these friends are actually the friend of wealth or friend of power. The reason is, so long you have money and force, power, you see, these friends will come, will remain. As soon as your fortune disappear, fortune goes decline, these friends also eventually will disappear. So these friends are ready to say goodbye. So you see, when you see, fortune gone, then even you try to contact with these as previous friends, very difficult to find where. And even you try to telephone to them, you may not get answer. Even you get some answer, that answer will be very short. So therefore, you see, the genuine friend, I'd say, genuine friend must come on the basis of your own good heart. Then again, you see, as a human nature, if you help other, if you share other suffering, ultimately that brings us more joy. If we forget others' right and others' welfare and think only oneself, then eventually you will be loser. Thinking using these lines, then you will develop certain kind of, how to say, the conviction, or good heart is something really essential. So good heart should be a part of your life. Then here, the mental development, not sufficient, you see, to cultivate only on the positive side. But we need, you see, the certain effort to minimize or to reduce the negative side about our mind, such as anger. Now there are a variety of angers. There's some anger, I quite agree, you see, that is some psychologists, some modernist psychologists, you see, believe that, you see, anger better to express. It's a certain anger which, you see, come due to some previous sort of, how to say, the negative experience. Then such things, express once, it reduces. But this is not the case every anger. Once you realize anger is something negative, something as a troublemaker, once you realize that even the realization itself, you see, makes some differences. So now, you see, think about anger. What is the usefulness about anger? Anger is something quite, how to say, I think quite cunning, quite clever. When we're facing some problem, some tragedy, then anger comes as a protector. And anger gives us more energy, more strength. And on the surface, you see, anger dispel, or anger, how to say, expel fear on the superficial level. But then, yes, you see, anger brings us some more energy. But that energy, if we look closely, that energy is something like blind energy. There is, not at all sure, you see, that energy whether become destructive or constructive, or useful or harmful, you see, not sure. And worst thing, you see, when anger dominates our mind, then during that moment, it destroyed the best part of human brain. That's true. Now, our own experience, you see, when we lose temper, you see, during that moment, you see, we use all, you see, negative words or the bad behavior, things like that. Then after anger disappear, anger, you see, reduce or disappear, then you feel very shy. You see, you feel embarrassed. You see, to meet that person. Sometimes, you see, you yourself, you see, try to hide somewhere in order to avoid, you see, to meet that person to whom you already, you see, say something very nasty things, isn't it? So this shows, you see, the anger dominates our mind. During that moment, the person really becomes something like mad. So therefore, the anger is always something, you see, anger brings us, you see, negative thing. Then again, now another question. You see, sometimes, you see, if we remain very honest or very, how to say, humble or gentle, then some people, unfortunately, some cases, you see, may take advantage on that situation. Then such a situation, you see, we analyze the situation, and the situation is really sure that you need some how to say, strong countermeasure. You can take, you see, countermeasure without anger, with reason, with realization of the situation, and use maximum human intelligence. So that countermeasure, in fact, become more effective than the measure which you take which you take by anger motivated. Now, after all, what is the definition of enemy? Enemy means a force or individual person who destroy your happiness directly or sources of happiness. I mean, destroying the sources of happiness. Now look, usually we consider the sources of happiness, there are some variety. Friend, one source of happiness. Wealth also is a source of happiness. And fame, good name, these things. But then, if we look, you see, these, although you see sources of happiness, but these sources, again, you see, not, it's not 100% guarantee. Once you have these sources, you will get definitely mental happiness. That's not sure. Even wealthy people sometimes see mentally very worried, isn't it? Very unrest, mental unrest. So you see, these sources are although you see generally the source of happiness, but not definite one. Then the definite one is calmness of mind. That is the real, you see, definite source of happiness or joy. Now look, external enemy can destroy directly our wealth, our friend, or fame, but cannot directly destroy our mental calmness. The mental calmness, which is a direct source of joy or happiness, that destroy only by anger, hatred, jealousy. So therefore, the ultimate destroyer of our happiness or source of our happiness is anger. So therefore, the real ultimate enemy is within ourselves, not outside. Again, you see, the person, usual enemy as a person, then as soon as that person, you see, that person's mind dominated by anger, then it remains as an enemy. But so, as soon as that, you see, anger disappear, you see, develop some kind of, friendship feeling, then that person becomes best friend, or that become friend. But in an enemy case, not like that. Permanent enemy. So therefore, you see, if we take precaution towards enemy, that's our general practice. If that is the case, we must take precaution about our most awful enemy, which always within ourselves. Then again, you see, anger also, you see, very bad for health. You see, anger develop. You see, your health situation deteriorated, and you see, lose, the appetite or good sleep. So you see, anger brings us all, you see, negative things or suffering. Ultimately, if you see, anger really, you see, develop very high degree, then suicide also, you see, happen. Therefore, you see, it is important to have, you see, these kind of outlook towards our the different parts of human thought. So human mind, things like, human mind is, you see, human mind is something like, you see, the storeroom. There are a lot of varieties, a lot of articles there. So within variety of article, you see, certain things are something very useful, some not so useful, some, you see, negative. So they analyze within thought is very essential. And then you see those positive things, positive thought, you see, try to increase. Those negative things, you see, try to decrease. So then, you see, individually, you will get more calmness, more, how to say, mental rest. And as a result, it creates genuine peace or genuine, how to say, friendly atmosphere within one's own family. So not only you yourself, how to say, enjoy it, you yourself, you see, arrive to, you see, benefit, but also your family member also, you see, get the benefit. Through that way, you see, eventually, as a friendly or positive atmosphere can develop community, a society, things like that. After all, you see, the initiative, a positive initiative must come from individual. So everybody, you see, talk about world peace. And world peace is really, you see, important. Then how to achieve world peace? World peace not come from sky, not come from earth, but its peace must come through mental peace. Peace, genuine peace, is not just absence of war. Peace is more than that. You see, peace means, how to say, genuine tranquility. I think genuine peace must come on the basis of mutual trust, mutual respect. So on international level, or family level, or the national level, I believe the good heart is something key thing, very important, very foundation. So therefore, you see, in every human activities, whether become positive or negative, ultimately depend on our own heart. So this is my belief, and according to my own experience, you see, trying with constant effort, you see, things can change. These positive things can develop. The result, more healthier, more happier person. That is something, I believe, something precious. So the conclusion is the warm heart or good heart is the source of happiness, ultimate source of happiness, ultimate source of strength. So with these things, the future will be happier and brighter. So these things, whether rich or poor, or educated or uneducated, or this or that, I mean, so with this religion, this faith or that faith, so no matter. So long we are human beings, we have this potential there. Whether we, how to say, make special effort or make effort or not, that's up to individual. So thank you very much. This is about my talk.
I will read from some of the questions here. We have approximately about 10 minutes for question and answers. The first question is, in these troubled times, how can one person make a difference?
As I mentioned earlier, the initiative must come from individual. So at the beginning, it seems, you see, insignificant. But then, you see, go that way, approach that way. There is possibility, you see, to create, to reach more effectively. But without a personal, or individual initiative, there is no possibility. So that's the only alternative. And after all, you see, the meaning of society or community means the collection of individual people. So that's my belief.
Second question, how do you find the strength to forgive those who have wronged you?
Again, even from the selfish viewpoint, if you remain some, ill feeling, remain inside, that ill feeling not necessarily harming or hurt the other one. So that ill feeling hurts only your own, your own mental states. Now, for example, in my own case, we have some, you see, quarrel with our Chinese brothers, sisters. Now here, you see, if I, you see, keep some negative feeling, you see, that negative feeling will not harm on our, the other side. You see, the ill feeling destroy my own, mental peace, and eventually it will destroy my health. So through that way, there is possibility the other side may joy if my physical become more, more weak or more something, isn't it? If I remain here, quite happy person and an easygoing person, I think, you see, it helps, you see, my, I think the mental state is calm, and as a result, can calculate is a better way, more effective way, so that the keeping, you see, negative feeling towards someone is not at all useful, no use. And then again, I think most important thing is I think one very forceful, source of, happiness or joy is one's own heart should be open. Then whether, you see, things become as we expected or not, you feel as far as my own motivation is concerned, I am clear, I am sincere, then there is no point to feel regret. If you yourself you keep something negative, then on top of the unfortunate things, you also feel much uncomfortable. So therefore, you see, thinking these lines, then you will develop some kind of courage, you see, to give, to show forgiveness. Right. That's my way of practice.
Next question. Sorry. How has winning the Nobel Peace Prize changed your long-term goals?
Actually, the practice of compassion, of forgiveness, these things are part of my own practice as a Buddhist monk. So as far as my practice is concerned, nothing changed. As I always say, you see, as one simple Buddhist monk, I practice these things as as I mentioned earlier, you see, I realize these things something good for me, good for others, therefore I practice these things. However, since they're receiving, how to say, the Nobel Peace Prize, I think it seems, how to say, I feel some kind of further more obligation or responsibility, you see, to express these things and to try to promote the value of compassion. And of course, through that, the Nobel Peace Prize also, I think, a lot of helped in the case of, how to say, awareness about Tibetan problem. Because one quite, I think, simple reason is the Nobel Peace Prize received by Dalai Lama of Tibet. Nobody say Dalai Lama of China. So it's through that way. So automatically, you see, people get, you see, more questions. Where is Tibet? What happened? And that kind of, all sorts of questions, you see, develop. So through that way, very helpful. Thank you.
Next question. Your Holiness, even though you believe in non-violence, do you think China should be punished for its occupation and abuse of your country? And if so, how?
Oh, that is a very complicated question. I, as a Buddhist monk, a person who believes, let's say, firmly non-violence and compassion. So you see, I consider the struggle for freedom of Tibet not some with, I mean, sorry. This is just how to say, they simply, you see, struggle for our own right. This does not mean, you see, how to say, harming China or Chinese. We respect, you see, China, the most populated nation. And through centuries, we live side by side. And we respect, you see, Chinese civilization. And as a Buddhist monk, in our daily prayer, we always, you see, pray all sentient beings. If that prayer is something genuine prayer, then there is no point to, how to say, exclude the most populated nation. So therefore, you see, whether people, I think, believe or not, I genuinely, how to say, feel, you see, the concern about the welfare of Chinese people, as like Tibet. This I feel. So and the struggle, a kind of, how to say, a struggle for a kind of freedom of Tibet. I do not consider this is just a mere political freedom. I feel this is very much related with spiritual or basic human value. Or in our case, Buddhism, also, you see, the freedom of Buddhism, something like that. So therefore, I consider this struggle is something spiritual work. If this is, you see, purely, you see, political matter, then I do not have to say join, or I do not also commit it. So therefore, the free Tibet means, you see, I think, what is it, the more, I think, more development or more promotion of, you see, spiritual value, that definitely, how to say, can help contribute for millions of Chinese. This I feel.
Next question. Your Holiness, if Tibetan Buddhism could be summed up in a single phrase, what would that phrase be?
That's usually I summarize something like this. Yeah. If you can help other people, other sentient beings, help. Do help. If you cannot, at least restrain from harming. So that sentences concluded all the Buddhist practice.
This will be the last question. What is the first thing you think about when you awaken in the morning?
Happy day.